G'day fans and welcome back to another exciting episode of DNA Reviews. And as you can clearly see from the very beginning, there is no A. The A is missing. It is just the D review because the Mr. A has decided to leave me for the night. And so as a result, it's just up to me to have a bit of a conversation about the good old Andor series, episode 3. Which of course aired last week, which is particularly exciting. So I'm going to need a bit of help from everybody out there to, talk to me and make me feel loved and welcome as I just natter on by myself about the episode. And unfortunately, it's actually a really good episode. It's a shame that Aaron's not with me tonight because a lot of people did say that episodes 1 and 2 were a bit on the slow side and a little bit, people were a bit unsure with what was going on. And then all of a sudden, episode 3 came in on board, and then it completely kicked it out of the park for a lot of fans out there. So very good. Good to see you. Chrissy joined me and Guy, and even Jacqueline. Good to see Jacqueline joining the show. So yes, I'm afraid I'm on my own. So if you can put up with my dulcet tones, my constant gurgling, hopefully with a bit of luck, not only will I not bore the bejesus out of you, but you'll actually learn something about this particular episode tonight. So yes, the fan base has been divided by this series quite significantly. A lot of people saying it's very anti-Star Wars. It's not how the George Lucas vision was, whereas a lot of other people are saying it's a nice, refreshing change. And I think ultimately, if the show isn't your cup of tea, just don't watch it. There'll be other series coming out afterwards. But for those of us who do like something a little bit different, you can't go wrong. So as a result, we're talking about episode 3, A Reckoning. So there's a lot to cover off in this, and I've picked out a whole lot of pictures. There may be a lot of occasions where I'm sort of just crapping on about stuff you're not really interested in, but hopefully you'll get something out of it. So, which is very, very cool. Looks like Guy's mentioned he hasn't heard of the series before last night and is hanging on every word. Well, as it was, Andor was announced about 3 or 4 years ago, but it kind of got lost in amongst all the other stuff that was coming out with Kenobi and Boba Fett and Mandalorian and whatever else, and it got completely overshadowed. And of course, its release got delayed because of the COVID lockdown. So, but it's finally appeared now, and as we've mentioned in our promos, it's the most unanticipated series of them all because most people don't even care about the character, let alone the movie he came from. So, as always, there's going to be spoilers. So if you haven't seen the show or you're a bit concerned about it, we're just going to come straight out and tell you everything. So hopefully with a bit of luck, it's not all bad. Now, with this show, because they split it up in stuff that's happening in the past and things that are happening in the present. So in the past, it's when Cassian is a young guy or young kid. I've put all those shots together, okay, just to make my life a little simpler. So it should be very, very cool. Dulcet works. I love that. Yeah, my dulcet tones, exactly right. If people are falling asleep during this presentation, I will not be surprised. So first things first, I've actually asked a few people, what is this logo and what does it represent? Now, it's apparently a logo that's never been used before in any of the Star Wars iterations. Clearly, it's inspired by the Rebel Alliance, but it's not. So it's obviously related to Andor, at least the series. I don't know if it's related to the character. I don't expect anybody to have the answer for this, but I always wondered, what is that logo meant to be? So we'll have to wait and see what transpires with that or whether it pops up somewhere else down the track. But I do find it interesting that it's the signature design for the series. So, and I will, for those who, because I'm talking by myself, I will have to look at the comments. For me, they're over there. So there will be moments where I'm sort of just tuning out, reading what everybody has had to say. Chrissy said, if fully admitting the show really isn't for me, I just can't get into it. And that's fair enough too. As we've made a point of saying in our review yesterday, it isn't for everybody. Some fans are disappointed with it. So that's why I said it's kind of split the fan base quite significantly. Almost as bad as what happened with the Book of Boba Fett to a large degree as well. DJ said, I'm happy for it to not be other people's cup of tea, but I feel like its quality can't be denied. I certainly agree with you on that one. It's a well-acted and well-shot show. Kenobi wasn't. Okay, yep. And you know what? I totally agree with you. And as we mentioned yesterday, the quality is outstanding. And regardless of its pacing or its story, its characters, or whether the situations work for you, its quality is magnificent. And that's the one thing that really can't be faulted. So, and of course, that carries on into this episode. So we kick things off with Kassa in his literal first step into a larger world. So if you remember yesterday, the leader of the tribe, the female, got killed. Good old Cass, everybody else has taken her back to the village, and good old Cass has said, you know what, I'm going to pop my nose into this ship and have a bit of a sticky beak around and see what the deal is. And of course, as we discover, he's never really been on a ship before. It's a completely foreign environment to him. So this is what was being picked up by some fans already, and I am going to cover this off in a bit more detail later on, where this is set in the past, but no one knows exactly when it's set. So the dead troops here, They have the yellow complexion, which covers off the whole thing of the toxins in the air and all the rest of it. But they're wearing CIS, which is the Separatists, right? So for those who don't know, the Separatists from the prequel movies, Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, the Separatists were known as the CIS, Confederacy of Independent Systems. So when I'm referring to the CIS, I'm referring to the Neimoidians and General Grievous and all those sort of guys, right? That's who they are. So this logo appeared on the uniforms, and no one really knows why, because there's a bit of confusion as to when this, what part of the timeline this is set in. So as a result, I'm actually going to cover off some theories very, very soon. But once again, we're seeing dead bodies with the eyes open. In fact, nearly all the dead bodies in the show have their eyes open. So it's a bit of an ongoing theme for whatever reason, make the dead dudes look really dead. So whether that works for you or not, I don't know. But I've got to say, I can't knock it. And of course, good old Casa, he's sitting there whacking this dude with his stickers like, yeah, dude, he ain't moving. So don't worry about that. But if there are all these toxins on this world on Canary, why weren't the kids and the tribe affected? And there's a theory behind that as well, which I will be covering off. Very, very cool. Good stuff. So this is a good example of the stranger in a strange land scenario. So he's got into the bridge of the ship, and you can clearly see he's never been there before. He doesn't know what anything is, all the lights, the buttons, the whole bit. So you can ascertain from this that he spent his entire life in the tribe, living this primitive existence. The fact that he's blow darts is a good example of the fact that he doesn't really have. He's not familiar with technology, which I thought was kind of cool. And of course, that led into the bit where he looks in his own reflection, which of course could be the first time he's actually seen himself. Now, I know some people say you can put your head over a waterfall, a lake, and you can see your face in the reflection of the water, but this is crystal clear. And I thought this was a really nice moment for him to finally see what he looks like, and which is quite possibly for the very first time. And I thought it was a very, very nice moment. And of course, after this, he goes completely troppo and starts smashing up the place. So very, very cool. Well spotted. Hang on, in the next shot, the eyes are closed. I suppose they are. And Jacqueline said, well spotted. Yep, good stuff. Oh, yes. Sometimes that happens with actors. If there's a lot of stuff going on, they will close their eyes. That's a very good observation. But it's not the first time, or the last time, sorry, that we will be seeing dudes with their eyes open when they are dead. But we're still with Casa. He's still on the ship, and he's having his moment trying to work out who he is in the grand scheme of things. And of course, then, as we know, because he's on the ship, Marva turns up with the brain spanking new B2. Now, if you're in the actual show itself, they showed B2 coming down the main street of Ferrix, and they did a nice wipe. Yeah, so he's the busted version in the present, and we've gone into the past, and now he's nice and shiny, looking very, very neat. And this, of course, introduces Marva into the situation, and then from there, you can determine what's going to happen. They're going to see the kid, and they're going to take him, and as a consequence, they become the de facto parents, if you will, which I thought was kind of cool. Now, she's obviously a skull. They're both scavengers, and they're obviously looking for bits on the ship. And now we know why they get hooked up and get together, which is particularly cool. Now, where there's a little bit of confusion, and this is like got a few people kind of rattled. Marva makes a mention that there's an incoming rebel frigate, Republic frigate, sorry, and the death of a Republic officer, which is the guy who was killed outside with the blow darts. And that's prompted a lot of people to ask, what is the timeline for this entire thing? Now, we took a punt yesterday and said that young Casa is probably around 9 years old, right? If that's the case, that puts it 2 years after Revenge of the Sith. But upon reflection, we've had a bit more of a think about it, right? So there's a few words here. I'm just going to read a few things out. And for the most part, except for one bit, it all fits. There's one bit that's just like a little bit like up in the air, a bit questionable. So just see what everybody thinks of this. So flashback time. So this is the flashback sequence only that we just watched, right? So if Casa is 7 years old at this point, then the year is 19 BBY, before the Battle of Yavin, which is exactly the same year that Revenge of the Sith takes place in. Okay. Now, it's important to remember his age will be correct because in the Andor series, as an adult, he's 21 years old, even though Diego Luna's in his 40s. But, let's not worry about that. So we're working on the view that, yes, if he's 21 in 5 BBY, 5 years before A New Hope, he's going to be at least possibly 7 years old, 19 BBY. Okay. So you got to work with a time frame here. So it's the same year as Revenge of the Sith. Let's just go with that. So that means the flashbacks that we are watching are actually occurring during the Clone Wars, right? So the Clone Wars are still going, which means the Separatists and the Republic still exist. The Empire hasn't been formed yet. And with that in mind, it's likely this is the last year or the last months of the war. Okay, so that fits it in. That's why when she said there's a Republic ship and there's Republic officers, it makes sense. It's not during the Imperial era, it's during the Republic era, during the Clone Wars. Okay, next to that, Marva could actually be a CIS, i.e., a separatist sympathizer. Right now, in Revenge of the Sith, all the sympathizers were aliens, right? But who's to say there weren't some humans as well? And if that's the case, she would believe the separatist propaganda that says the Republic are actually the nasty pasties, they're the bad guys, right? As opposed to what we as the audience know, they're the good guys. The only thing that doesn't make sense, and this is the reason why I've got it in pink, is why are the crew members on the ship dressed, she said that's all right, that the Republic guys got killed, the Republic officer outside got killed, but he's wearing a CIS uniform. That's the only bit that doesn't make sense. So I can only assume that they're spies. Make of that what you will. It's the only thing that doesn't fit into this theory. Now, why is Canary an abandoned planet? So it's been suggested that we know for a fact that the Death Star started construction during the Clone Wars. We saw it at the end of Attack of the Clones, and they started construction of it straight away, right? Now, there's a possibility that they did a weapons test on Canary, okay, maybe by the CIS, and it was chemical in nature, and that's the reason why you have all the yellow smoke and all the yellow dead dudes. Or the other theory is they were mining a hazardous material to be used as the Death Star super weapon, super laser, but it exploded, got out, contaminated, use whatever term you want. And that's possibly why they then turned to kyber crystals to power the super laser, which is what we see in Rogue One, okay? Stick with me. Now, if that's the case, it is likely that the CIS, the separatists, used adult slave labor in the mines, and that is where the adults came from, in the tribe, right? So all the kids were left behind, the adults were all taken away, put in the mines, and they all ended up dying, okay? Now, of course, that doesn't fit in with part of the episode from yesterday where the guy says that there was an imperial, contamination or whatever else. So that doesn't fit the timeline. So it makes sense that once the Empire came to power, they actually covered up what happened on Canary, right? So they've said there was a CIS test site. Remember the separatists and the Empire were sort of hand in hand. One sort of superseded the other. And we'll just say that there's been a mining accident, so don't go to Canary so people don't discover the truth, right? And this is why the kids survived, because whatever contamination occurred has come and gone. Canary is a perfectly okay place. The kids lived on. It was all good. So that's a lot to absorb, I acknowledge, but for the most part, it kind of makes sense. It fits, and that means the flashbacks occurred during the Clone Wars. You still with me? Are you still watching, or have people fallen asleep yet? Very good. Adopted parents are very much an ongoing motif of Star Wars. Yes, it is. Foundlings, left, right, and center. Sorry, but I can't look at Minerva and not think of Aunt Petunia, Harry Potter, same actor. Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, that's the downside when you sort of use the same actors for these things. So that's how we think it works, right? So that's the reason why there's making references to Republic stuff here, there, and everywhere when we clearly are working in the Imperial era. So that's our theory. Until someone says otherwise, we'll stick with that, shall we? So there you go. Still following, if not a bit lost, I don't blame you. It's taken a while to sort of wrap my head around it. But if Andor is 7 years old, that's what you need to know, and it all fits, right? If he's older than that, then it doesn't fit. Let us move along. All right, so the Andors, because Marva, that's her surname, Andor. So they go to the ship to find some power units and end up picking up a kid. Mate, how good is that? It's like when you see kids in the shopping trolleys going around the store. You know, they obviously belong to the parents. You're thinking, oh, which aisle did you pick that up from? So, yes, they swap themselves a kid, as one does, because Marva's concerned that the Republic, whoever that happens to be, are going to kill all the kids who killed the officers. Okay, so that fits into that whole separatist propaganda thing. Don't trust the Republic, they're all bad guys. Whereas in actual fact, they may have rescued the kids. Who knows? Maybe that's how Kerry gets off Canary. I hadn't thought of that. So when Cassian eventually gets to go back to Canary looking for his sister, looking for Kerry, everybody gone. And the reason why they're gone is the Republic picked them all up and took them away. Rescued them effectively. So there you go. I just thought of that just then. Oh, how good am I? And of course, this shot confirms that the ship that Cassian is hiding in, which you see in the previous episode on Ferrix, actually belonged to Marva. So he's actually been hanging out on that ship. So if you remember the U-shaped ship that we said he was abandoned and not looking too flash, that was Marva's ship. So I thought that was kind of groovy. It was a nice little link there. And finally, as someone has pointed out, there's actually our first mother son relationship in the galaxy far, far away. It's always been fathers and sons and all sort of thing. The mothers, which Christy will attest to, tend to always get forgotten, always get pushed aside for the fathers. And it was good to see that they finally changed that and made this a bit more of a mother-son thing. But for poor old Casa, even though a new life awaits among the stars, we know that his life is going to be filled with misery and loneliness. So, it's what would have been a good adventure for him. Doesn't turn out that way. Good stuff. We all still there? Yay, mums. Yes, exactly right. So that's why we thought her name was like, he called her Mother, but it's actually Marva. So very good. Anyway, that's all the flashback stuff, and that gets us in the past. So it's actually filling in all these gaps about his history. Now, whether you needed to know that or not, you probably didn't, right? So you could probably look at it and go, well, that's great, but who really cares? It's a fair call too. That's probably one of those fast forward moments in the show, if that's your thing. So good stuff. Very good. All right, so that brings us to the present, which is now 5 years before the Battle of Yavin. Okay, so as we mentioned yesterday with episode 1, you need to kind of be a fan to follow the timeline, okay? Because the timeline works backwards. So once you get after A New Hope, it becomes ABY after the Battle of Yavin, and then the numbers go up sequentially, which is kind of cool. But before that, it goes backwards. It's very, very complicated. So 5 BBY is actually sooner than 8 BBY. Yeah, don't worry about it. All right, so this is what I like. Clearly, there are no work-safe rules on Ferrix, right? I mean, these dudes up here, they're just hanging on this thing, right? I mean, I'm not seeing like any harnesses or anything like that. It's like, mate, there'll be dudes dropping off all the time from this. But the visuals, you have to admit, look spectacular. It was really, really impressive. All these big machines, all this working environment. A lot of people will probably say, oh, I'd love to work at a place like that. But of course, not really, because it would be not the friendliest and happiest place of all. And of course, the weather is constantly miserable, as we often see. I like this, right? We finally got to see the tram. And as I said, it actually looks like a Melbourne tram from the 1980s. How good's that? Like the doors are in the same place. You got the front windscreen. Even the sides look roughly the same. So it'd be very groovy to see what they model this after for those who've never seen it before. So, when was the last time you saw a picture of a tram from the 80s? Oh, bloody hell, eh? Unbelievable. Yes, so this is actually particularly cool. And, of course, we get to see a protocol droid. I didn't notice this until today when I was watching the episode again. I go, oh, how about that? Our first protocol droid makes an appearance, made up of all sorts of coloured bits and pieces and bobs. But, I don't know if anybody else has sort of picked up on that before, but it was a nice little nugget that they chucked in there, which is kind of cool. And it's not the last time we see droids in the show as well. As has been pointed out in the past couple of days, the series features some fantastic imagery. Now, then what took my attention was what was going on all the way back here, right? Now, for all I know, they may have done this on the volume. So I think if that's the case, that line right there, so before that is actually the set, and back there is the volume. I don't know. But the fact they went to all the trouble to do the street down there and populate it full of people, I thought it was a really nice detail. And it's the one thing that this series has where, like a lot of the other previous Star Wars series, the world building is really, really good. And you can actually believe you're in this foreign place. And I find it fascinating. You can still look in the background, not see anything, but you're kind of glad it's there. And it actually makes the production more impressive and even more expensive than potentially what it really is, which is kind of cool. So our Primors are about to turn up in a flying pyramid. I thought this is an interesting sort of ship. And, of course, their ships pop out from underneath, the pre-tax, I think they call them, or tac pods or whatever, underneath there. But a flying pyramid, it's like not exactly the sleekest and spunkiest Star Wars ship in the universe, but it's clearly practical. You do wonder what the deal is and whether it can fly in different directions, because all four sides would be the same. So, I don't know, make of that what you will. But... yes, I'm not sure where the design of that came from, but it seems to be practical, seems to work, and everybody's happy. So I don't know if other people picked up on this, but the guys are having a very bumpy ride coming into land, and I thought this had echoes of The Force Awakens with the stormtroopers landing at the start of the film. If you remember, all the lights are flashing and they're all sort of shaking from side to side, and that's exactly what happens here. So I don't know if it's meant to imply anything or suggest anything, but it was interesting to note that they've got time to think about what it is that they're doing, what they're going to expect when they get there. Remember, Khan, for example, Cyril Khan, hasn't been on Ferrix before. That's his first time he's attending, whereas other characters are sitting there going, yep, we're here to sort of like do the duty for the Primors. It was a nice sort of juxtaposition between the different characters, which is why when you look at this, you say, well, one is looking for action. That's Mosk on the left. And when the other one, which is Khan on the right, is seeking justification for his actions. Remember, he's going against orders here. He was told to just bury the whole 2 dudes getting knocked off in the first episode in a report somewhere, and instead he's got a whole team together and they're flying off to Ferrix to hunt out Cassian Andor. Has the potential to go completely pear-shaped big time, but both of them would be doing this for different reasons, even though the ultimate goal is the same. And of course, all the guys in the background will be going, yep, bit of action, bit of fun. What could possibly go wrong? Now, of course, when they land, right, boof, the ship lands, the doors are open, they're all getting out. You could just see it. Now, Khan has some fantastic facial features, facial acting, right? And you can see it here. He's saying there's no turning back, right? That's it. They're done and dusted. They've just got to plow on forward no matter what. And I took the line from A New Hope. You know, I'm taking awful risk, Khan. This had better work. And it really should. And as far as he's concerned, it's all done and dusted. They go in there, they pick up Cassian, they go back, right? But a lot of people wouldn't necessarily see it that way. And of course, we all know how things are going to transpire. Now, if you've not watched this episode before, you may be interested to learn how things play out. Yes, I agree with that. You just know Khan lives with his mum. Yeah, he is. He's clearly trying to be something that he's not. And it really comes out in this episode. So I found it interesting that when you do see him later on with Marva, he's playing all the big tough guy. But in actual fact, he's a coward. And so, yes, he's... you do wonder what his future is going to hold. So I like this tac pods. That's what they're called. I like the fact you got the ship landed. They all come out. Now, it's a very cramped ship. You look back there, and they're all squeezed in this one thing, right? I thought, yeah, that'd be pretty friendly for sure. But I like the idea that you physically actually see it, and they come out of it. You know, there's some science fiction shows. What they'll do is they'll build a ramp, but they'll CG in the rest of the ship, and the guys just walk down the ramp, right? This is for the real thing. You can clearly see they've built this thing, and the guys come out of it. And I like that because it's something you don't normally see, and it goes to show how small these things happen to be as well. So those guys for that ride down would have been pretty cozy for sure. So, but they'd come down to Ferrix looking for some action. All right. So where is that going to lead us? So this is what I noted yesterday, and I just wanted to put in here for good measure. But Marva's home is actually quite large and spacious. I mentioned this in the episode yesterday. And for whatever reason, she's obviously amassed a fair bit of money in her scavenging days and been able to get some big premises. But good for her. It's like maybe it's her retirement fund, and she's been able to buy a big apartment and good stuff. But of course, when the dudes turn up, now I love this. This is a classic, as we were just saying a moment ago. Khan is a coward, and I agree with Dale, lives with his mum. And this is his moment to be the dude. I'm in command of the troops, right? And he's talking to an older lady. I was like, how more wussier can you get, right? It's like, you know, look at me, I'm in command, I'm in charge. And I was like, oh, dude, you know. And of course, none of the guys would be sucked in by this. They'd be going, oh, mate, he's just a tryhard. But I got to say, it does actually work, and I like that. Yes, is she growing pot? Yeah, well, she does have the plants back over here. It does look a bit suspicious, the bit of the old wacky tobacco. Yes, the Ferrix factor, as we'd like to call it. So absolutely love it. So yes, this is where Khan is he's playing the tough guy role, which he doesn't do very convincingly. Only he would think he's better than what he really is. Everybody else would see through it straight away. Very, very cool. Gregor said with that flight down, I got the aliens vibe. Yeah, well, it is, you know, on an express elevator to hell going down. So, and it is Khan's first drop. He's never been to Ferrix before. Okay, and he's really out of his depth. So, and he's just trying to hold it together. So, anyway, they go and pay Marva a visit. But they want Cassian. Now, I found it interesting. I don't know if anybody else has picked up on this, but despite all the heavy-handed tactics that they're dealing out with Marva at the moment, at this point, Cassian is just a suspect, right? They haven't proven anything at all. They say, oh, we're looking for a dude who came from Canary. There's Cassian. He's got a criminal record. It doesn't mean it's the same guy. And it's just like, well, what do you call it? Circumstantial evidence. Say, well, what if someone else came from Canary and they just didn't know about it? Remember, on his official records, he comes from a planet called Fest. So it's almost like guilty until proven innocent. And I thought that was quite interesting. But we know, as the audience, that Cassian killed the guys. But strictly speaking, these guys don't know. They just think he did. So if Cassian was to turn up and go, no, I wasn't. I didn't do it. I was here drinking with my mate, as we saw in the first episode. Maybe they'd have to let him go. Hard to say. So even though they got the ship of slogs and all the rest of it, but still circumstantial. There's no actual evidence to say, yes, he did actually kill the two guys. And of course, we've got a case of really good timing. Where's Cassian, right? No one's saying anything. And then, of course, as it turned out, you know, Cassian dials into B2. Where are you? There you go. Sprung bad. It was a good moment. And even this point, they're trying to keep Marva quiet. So you just think, okay, you're going to rally the troops, and off we go. Now, the thing about this, of course, is that the Primors are not popular, the Blues, as they're called in the series. And when I say the peasants are revolting, if they're authority figures, when they turn up, they just effectively, by the sounds of it, just cause trouble. People don't like seeing them around. So they're not following the old, oh, we're the authorities. We're going to build a relationship with the locals and work with them, and build them tennis courts and basketball courts and mix with the youth and all this sort of thing. They obviously only ever turn up when they're being heavy-handed. And of course, that doesn't build a good relationship with the Primors. So the fact that they're there means that the entire crowd is going to be against them. And if, depending on what they do, things could turn badly for these guys very, very quickly. And it's a good example of saying, well, okay, if you live in a totalitarian state, it does help to work with the people you're controlling. Don't be the dictator and the controlling force. And of course, these guys aren't aware of that until it's too late. But I did like this, the fact that the peasants are going, yep, these guys are here and we're not happy about it. So where's it all going to lead? In the meantime, Cassian has finally caught up with Luthen. And I love that Cassian just wants his money. Here's your box. I'm out of here, right? Done. But Luthen, no, he wants to have a chat. He wants to talk about this. He wants to talk about that. And clearly Luthen's got ulterior motives as to why he wanted to catch up with Cassian. But I love Cassian just like, give me the money and go. He even shows her the money and then puts it away again. It's like, oh, yeah, thank you. I know the word. I just can't say. Oh, forget it. Some words just won't roll off the tongue. Maybe I need to speak a little slower. Totalitarian. So this was a really good sequence because we learn a lot about both characters. And we also learn that Luthen does have a connection to the Alliance. As we mentioned yesterday, the Alliance isn't as well structured as what we'll see in a few years' time. But here we go. Totalitarian. Oh, my God. It's almost like a song. Totalitarian. Yeah. Thank you. Awesome. I'll try and remember that for next time. Or I'll just use another word, dictatorship. So this was actually quite good, right? So Luthen knows a lot more about Cassian that even Cassian was aware of. And it's a good character moment between the two of them. Even though it's kind of funny because I just spent a lot of time just gasbagging. It's, very, very groovy. And of course, good old Tim. Now, we discovered yesterday that Tim was the one who dobbed Cassian in, right? And I was thinking, oh, dude, what have you done? I was like, mate, you're trying to catch up with Bix and get into her good books, and you've clearly gone around the wrong way. It's like, what is it? The road to hell is paved with the best intentions, and it is not going to end well. And even the guy in the background is thinking, dude, what did you do? And why did you do it? And it was totally unnecessary. I mean, Cassian was going to leave. He was going to sell his box and bugger off out of town. So should have just left it. Oh, mate. So, yes, and you are right. Luthen is a great character. He's really, really, in fact, the whole show's littered with great characters, which works extremely well. So, yeah, and this is like, Tim, this is where you learn Tim is effectively a knob. Remembering he doesn't know what Bix has been up to. Bix has been doing all these shady deals on the left, right, and center, dealing with Luthen, obviously to do with the Alliance. And Tim's completely oblivious to it, which means he's suspicious of what she's up to. May think that she's two-timing with Cassian, who knows? But either way, he made a decision. And dude, it was the wrong one. What were you thinking, old son? The MacGuffin makes an appearance, which of course is the box, right? We don't know what it does. We just know it's intact. It works. It's really, really cool. You would have thought Luthen would have said, yep, beauty, I got the box. I'm bailing. Okay, Cassian, come with me. But no. As we said, Luthen wants to have his big conversation. And this box, which we eventually lose, is the key thing. Come for the box. Buy the bastard. Take it and go. And, of course, it doesn't end up being the case at all. So I did like it when it sort of appeared. And Luthen was almost like not interested in the box at all. He realizes recruiting Cassian is the way to go because, funny enough, you can get more boxes later on. Whatever this thing is, whatever it does, it'll end up in a trivia question competition somewhere down the track. So this is interesting, right? Now, remember, it's 5 years before the Battle of Yavin, right? And it carries over what we already suspected, that the Imperial Empire has a huge level of arrogance, right? They're in control of the entire galaxy. They're virtually invincible. And, of course, that's echoed by Admiral Moti's speech in A New Hope, right? The Rebel Alliance just insignificant, not to be worried about. No one cares. We are in power. We're in control. And, of course, history has shown in real life that governments and dictatorships that work that way don't last, right? Now, there's a few that are still going in our world, but most of them, by and large, don't last, right? There's a lesson to be learned from that. But you can imagine from the Empire's point of view, when they're in control, that it's like, well, the world is good. And at this point, it's been 14 years, right? 14 years with the galaxy being ruled by the Empire. What could possibly go wrong? And of course, these guys know it. That's the reason why Cassian is able to do what he does, which is effectively break into ships and steal stuff, because nobody cares. They don't care. And as we learn later on, 5 years later, it's all going to come crashing down on them in a really big way. So I thought that was actually kind of cool, which is very funny, because in this comment here, when he says these days will end, of course, none of the characters realize just how soon that's going to be. It's only going to be 5 years later. So it was just lucky that things transpired the way they did in Rogue One. Otherwise, the Galactic Empire could have kept going. But Luthen, at this point, he realizes, there's got to be a time when things finish. And after 15 years of being under this galactorial dictatorship, he would be clearly seeing that, yes, something needs to change, but it needs something to make it happen. And that's not going to happen just yet. But I thought this was a really, really good sequence between the two guys. Then, of course, we discover that Cassian's father, we saw him with Marva earlier, was executed by hanging. Now, of course, the whole thing of hanging, because it's so, like medieval days. And, of course, we saw it in the book of Boba Fett. And they hung the dude in the town square. So it's an interesting sort of mixture between science fiction, futuristic technology and all the rest of it, and old school methods of just getting stuff done. So I think it was very surprising to hear that. And it was just an offhanded comment. He said, your father was strung up in the town square. And that's, of course, why he reveals his motivations for seeking out Cassian in the first place. It's all well and good you got the box, but I want to know how you got the box, right? What's the problem? What did you do? And, of course, Cassian just said, I just went and got the damn thing. But so at least we now know what his father's fate was. And they hung him. I was like, it's a bit osh. You do wonder what he did to have that crime. Like, what kind of crime did he commit to be punished that way? So maybe that'll cover it off in one of the other flashbacks. So we've seen the flashbacks of Cassian or Cassa as a kid. Maybe we'll see him a bit later on. I don't know if they will, because they have to use a different actor. And to show what happens with that. And, of course, that would push Cassian even further away from wanting to be controlled by authority and government figures and all the rest of it. So a very interesting sort of notification there, or something to really pick up on. This was interesting. Right now, we've seen previously twice. Of course, Cassian will kill him cold blood. Now, of course, Stellan, the actor, is a pretty significant dude. He's not going to get killed, but he could have, because we've seen previously that, unlike a lot of shows, they stick a gun in someone's head and they go, nah, it's not going to fire. We've seen Cassian do that twice in Rogue One and in 2 episodes prior. So you could actually think, well, he will actually pull the trigger if he needs to. So I thought this was a good moment. And you do wonder, and like, he stuck the gun right between his eyes, like he's definitely not going to miss. So it was an example of showing just how desperate he was. And of course, he knows things about Cassian that he didn't think he would know. So who are you? What are you from? And at this point, Luthen still hasn't told him about the Alliance. So I thought that was quite interesting. So it's just some mysterious guy who wants to buy the box, who seems to know everything about your backstory. Oh, that's just got Shifty written all over it, hasn't it? Hello, I've lost the picture. There you go. Hang on. So I was going to say the Bush Telegraph. Here we go. Oh, I've lost a couple of pictures. I was going to say, so the sequence occurs where they start banging on all the drums, right? Making all the noise to get everybody's attention. So I'm trying to think why my picture didn't turn up. Where's my picture? It's a good picture too. Hang on, I'll just try this, see if this works. Bear with me. Okay, hang on. I've got it. Okay, and this one. Just give me a second. I just got to fix my picture. These are important pictures, especially the second one. You're going to love it. Okay. Very, very good. All right. So it's what I said. The Bush Telegraph kicks into action, right, when they're banging on all the metal drums to get everybody's attention. And it's designed to intimidate all our blues, our primors. Now, this makes a lot of sense, because how do you get everybody's attention at the same time for the same reason? And they're all banging on the things. And wasn't that a fantastic sequence? Because they're aware that something bad is going to happen. And of course, that's how they, it's what, as I said, it's the Bush Telegraph. It is the way of ensuring that everybody's aware of the same thing at the same time. And of course, the whole place goes into complete lockdown straight after that. Now, here's one for you. Is that Dave Filoni? So I saw this guy today and I go, geez, it looks like him, doesn't it? And he's sitting there and he's banging on the metal thing. It's like, what do you reckon? Does anybody out there think that is Dave Filoni? If it's not, doesn't matter. But I did think, oh, maybe it was. That's his little cameo. So he's done the being an X-Wing pilot in Mandalorian, and now he turns up here on Ferrix, bashing the shit out of a metal thing. So very, very cool. You are right. It's the old prison trick. Bang on the pipes. Exactly right. And of course, it puts the Premors completely on edge because they don't know what's going on. I mean, Mosk knows it's designed to intimidate everybody, right? But good old Khan is like shitting himself thinking, mate, what's going on? And of course, it's noisy too. It'd be really, really distracting as to what's going on. Now, I found this funny, right? So it's saying here, shit's going down, all the shutters are coming down, and I couldn't help but have a laugh. All those roller shutters look exactly what you would find in the shops down the street. You said in the Star Wars universe, this is supposed to be laser beams and all this sort of thing, but nah, just good old-fashioned roller shutters. It does the job. But I had to have a laugh when I saw that, and I go, oh, mate, I'll tell you what, I see those at the local shops down the road. So very, very cool. Absolutely loved it. All right, so guess what we've got figured out? So it's 40 clicks across the wastelands. And of course, yesterday we heard 2.3 clicks when Luthen was landing. And I go, how long is a click? What's the distance of a click? Well, according to Wikipedia, it's a kilometer, right? So it's 40 kilometers. So we were discussing yesterday whether it's miles, feet, inches, whatever. And for those who are interested in the Wikiped, I don't know where they got the reference from, but a click apparently is a kilometer. I don't know if you knew that or not. Aaron yesterday thought it was miles, but no, kilometers. So go figure. So I don't know why they just didn't say that. 40 kilometers instead of 40 clicks. So very, very cool. Guy, yes, force fields are expensive. That's actually a good point. Maybe they couldn't afford the damn thing. So anyway, 40 clicks, 40 kilometers across the wasteland. There you go. So when you do that, you just traveled 20 kilometers. How good's that? All right, well, 2 kilometers. All right, so we got the big fight scene, okay, because the two guys are in there. Cassian was there, Luthen was there, and all the shit's going down. Okay, the Premors are outside. And, of course, I don't know how we got time to do this, but Luthen set off all these charges, and shit's going down everywhere. There's things dropping all over the place. And because you've got these extra added threats, and it impacts both sides. So it's not just like it's impacting the bad guys and our good guys are sitting back here having a cup of tea. It's impacting everybody. And it's a really, really good moment. And you're thinking these things are so big and so heavy. You don't know who's going to get knocked over and what's going to happen. So, and of course, as we learn, you lose the box in the process as well. So there's a nice level of predictability here because in normal Star Wars shows, the bad guys would all be squished and bashed and crashed. Our heroes would just run over, grab the box and bugger off, right? But they don't even get to do that. And I like that. It was something a little bit different. The threat was significant for both sides. So there you go. Click was used many years ago. I would expect a different measurement at Galaxy. I did too. I didn't expect kilometers, right? So as I said, it's from Wikipedia. I don't know. Make of that what you will. I was expecting some other sort of term, but it wasn't to be. So kilometers. So American people were going, what's a kilometer? They use the miles, and they do in England as well. Very good. I need a drink, mate. I'm getting so excited. All right. We mentioned yesterday that in the first 2 episodes, they're doing things in this series that you do not see in the galaxy far, far away. All right. Dead bodies with the eyes open. Okay. Sex scenes, effectively. The morning after, the morning before, the night before. Plugging dudes in the head and all this sort of thing. So they're really pushing buttons here, going in different directions. And another thing that cropped up in this episode, there you go. Okay, we've never seen this before. Violence against women with blood, right? And now it's funny, if you look at the movie The Force Awakens, right, every male character in that show got injured, right? Whether it was like Finn got injured and Poe got injured, he was getting tortured, and Kylo got stabbed in the guts or whatever, but Rey didn't get a scratch, right? None, zero, right? Perfectly pristine condition. Whereas in this, and so I don't know if anybody picked up on that, but I certainly did, right? And they said it's almost like saying, no, he can't injure the female for whatever reason, okay? Make of that what you will. But in this, they said, oh, no, now the guy didn't physically beat her. What he did is he pushed her head against the wall, and that's where she got the injury from. But I was impressed that they actually did this at all. And they chain her up and leave her there, right? And I thought, far out, okay? So the only character other than the Cassian who got the scratch in the first episode, Bix here has had a bit of a hard day at the office. She's chained up and effectively just left there when the guys bugger off. And I thought, that's something you don't normally see. And in terms of being unpredictable and different, I got to applaud them for it, even though it might be a bit upsetting for some people. I don't know. So, but I picked up on it and I thought, well, okay, I don't see this very, very often at all. And of course, Tim. So comeuppance time. He's the one who brought all this down upon him, and he's going to get plugged. And you're an idiot, Tim. So he brought it all upon himself. Now, the interesting thing of this sequence is straight afterwards, the guys are panicking, and because they've just shot an unarmed civilian. So the Bush Telegraph has gone around telling everybody that these guys are here causing a bit of trouble. If word gets out that the Primors are now shooting unarmed civilians, as you can see, it is not going to end well at all. And it's possible, because this guy takes his hat off straight away, that he's never killed anybody before, right? And that's the reason why the guy on the right-hand side tells this dude to bugger off to the ship and get the ship. So I really like that. In normal Star Wars, as we said yesterday, the bad guys are the bad guys. Whatever they're doing, they're really proud of it, right? But here, the system and the structure is starting to break down, because the attacker started at the hangar where Luthen and Cassian are. These dudes, they've got a woman who's just tried to run away, and they bashed her head in a little bit, and this guy's just killed an unarmed guy. So already the structure's starting to break down, and it takes the experienced officers or the experienced troopers to take control of the situation. And that's why this guy, the guy on the right, who's looking over his shoulder, says to the guy on the left, go back to the ship, because he knows that if the natives, the locals, the peasants, if you will, get hold of this dude, he's the one who's going to get strung up. You just do not shoot unarmed civilians. And I really like this, because it was something you don't normally get to see. Once again, it's a dark side to the whole Star Wars universe. And for that alone, it was actually really, really interesting. Yes. The name like Tim, I was expecting to be a red shirt. Well, he turned up being a red shirt in the end, didn't he? So, yes, he got plugged big time. So already things are starting to fall apart. Now, of course, you've got the two guys who are left behind with Marva, right? Which at face value would have been, okay, we've got the easy job. We just stay here with Marva. It's all good. The guys go out, they get Cassian, they come back, pick these two dudes up. Of course, the guys are going out, haven't come back. The Bush Telegraph thing is going off, all the bang, 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 all the noise. And these guys are like, it's the psychology of no longer being in charge. They don't know what's happening, and they don't know what to do. And this then puts people on edge, because you're thinking, what are they going to do? And this show has already shown so far that it's prepared to take risks, it's prepared to do something different. And you do think, I wouldn't put it past these guys to shoot Marva, because she's stirring them up a little bit. So instead, they eventually leave. But it was a good moment to show this is how people are struggling with what's going on when the situation is getting out of hand. And I thought it was a really, really nice moment. Good stuff. So, and of course, she's just sitting back, relaxing, and just saying it's all good, it's all groovy, and saying how the noise just bugs the crap out of everybody. And it does goes to show once again that how authority figures still need to respect the people. And of course, in our real world, there are certain places in the world today, even as right now, where that's not necessarily happening. So this was a really, really good moment, because we didn't really know what was going to happen after this. So absolutely loved it. Oh my goodness, I've lost my pictures. So hang on, I'll have to look at my pictures, see what's going on. Now, so Mosk, sorry, for whatever reason, my pictures are all dying on me. Mosk, he would be loving this, right? You just thinking, okay, he's in armed combat. They're difficult odds. It's a hostile environment, and he pulls out a hip flask. How good's it? He's like, mate, this is what the soldier lives for. So you do wonder what his future is going to be. Will he end up being a part of the Empire? Will he just stay where he is? Or he's going to get killed off somewhere along the way? But he is standing out. Liquid courage. I love that. When do you see a hip flask in the Star Wars universe? Never. Not once. And of course, because he's not wearing a helmet, he can just take a swig, and he is good to go. He is ready to rock and roll. Was this the first proper swear word dropped this? No, it wasn't. So we heard bastard yesterday, twice, actually. And this time around, of course, he does mention the word shit. So it's becoming a bit of a common thing to have swear words, modern day, our real life swear words appearing in the show, which has thrown a few people off, but at least they're not hardcore swear words, but they are still there. So yeah, so we had two bastards yesterday, and episodes 1 and 2, and of course we've got shit today. So interesting. So Khan, he's hiding in the building. Everything is falling apart, and you can just see it's like, okay. And of course he's losing dudes. At this point, a couple of their guys have already been killed, and you'd be thinking, mate, what do? You can't pull it now. The damage is done. Okay, and so if you're going to feel sympathy for this dude, which clearly we're not going to, he brought it all upon himself, and there's a lesson to be learnt from this for sure. So yeah, so we're ready for the big fight. Okay, the whole town's gone bolted, and the irony here is that the Primors, right, Khan and the troops have all brought this upon themselves. Right, they didn't need to do this. They followed the Cassian Andor lead. They've landed on the planet. They've roughed a few people up, shot a dude when they didn't need to shoot a dude. and they've all brought it upon themselves. And it's like, guys, what are you doing? So absolutely unbelievable. One thing I did pick up on, and I'm just going to do this just to make this a bit more interesting to look at. One thing I did pick up on, if would have made it perfect if he made it was like dang fair. Well, that's what we said. It's like whatever happened to the old Bantha Poodoo and all this sort of thing, and the Nerf herder, and they've clearly just decided to go away from that and not show that at all. And to be fair, it does actually have a stronger connotation when you do that, when you actually use real life swear words, because then people don't laugh at them. Because whenever you heard Scruffy Nerf herder, I mean, you laughed at that, right? That was a funny thing when you heard that in The Empire Strikes Back. But when you use real swear words, the emphasis is a lot greater. So you can understand why they've done it. Now, whether they should have done it is anybody's guess. But that's the direction they've gone down. Remembering this is a show that not everybody's going to watch. Okay, Star Wars fans will watch it. Some of them, not all. Some will just dial out of it straight away. But the general public won't, and kids probably won't because it's too slow. It's not really their cup of tea. So they can get away with a little bit more, and I think that's part of the plan. So, it's supposed to be a galaxy far, far away. The more real world elements that drop in, it pulls them out, and that's right. And that happens on a regular basis too. So even like we've seen in some of the clothing, they look, you can buy them down at Savers or whatever else. There's some things that they just can't get away from. They can't make it too sci-fi, as we mentioned earlier about kilometers and time and all the rest of it. Some things they just got to keep the same. And we mentioned yesterday, like in Battlestar Galactica, they tried to introduce things like centons and yarns and all the rest of it. And the audience is going, what the hell's a friggin' centon? So sometimes you do have to ground it in real world. But if you can work with it, it works really well. Okay, so when Luthen says the Premor bastards, there's no piss farting around with that. He's very, very hardcore. If he had said the Premor nerf herders, that's people are going to laugh at that. And this is a show that has very little comedy when you sit and think about it. This is interesting. I don't know if you pick up on this, everybody out there. It's a droid dealership, I think it is, selling R5 units. I think it's a dealership. For all I know, it could be a cafe and they just serve drinks and whatever. But I thought it was in the background. I thought, that's kind of cool. Something a little bit different. Buy one, get one free. So I just noticed that today by sheer accident. So, yeah. You can understand why they did it. It's a nitpick. I still really like this. Yeah, and you're right. I'm completely with you. As I said, some people won't go for it. It's like, and as we said yesterday, it's like in Star Trek Discovery when they started dropping the F word. It's like, oh God, you can't do that. Never had Star Wars swearing. I've never had swearing in Star Trek like that ever before. And all of a sudden they're dropping F bombs and go, boy, guys, what are you guys doing? All right, so. Now we're getting back to Pearl Cyril Khan, and you just know, mate, he's having a bad day. He's got a gun in the back of his head, and it's like, dude, your day is going to get a lot worse. And as it turns out, it will. So he's not having a good time of it. And of course, Luthen says to Cassian, just kill him. All right, straight out, no mucking around. Now, at this point, they don't know who he is. They just think he's just a guy. They ask him, who's out there? And he goes, 14, a dozen troopers and 2 officers. And he's one of the 2 officers. And they clearly haven't picked up on the fact that he's in charge. All right. So when Luthen says to Cassian, kill him, we know that Cassian could easily do that. So for whatever reason, they choose not to do it. All right. So maybe there's a little bit of sympathy in Cassian after all, even though we know he's a hard ass. But of course, Khan here is absolutely shitting bricks big time. Right. So he thinks his life is flashing before his eyes. And you think, how is this going to end? But of course, he's a major character. We knew he wasn't going to die. But there you do it. Very, very good. So this, I'll have to get back to that later on, DJ. You just throw me off with a whole lot of words there. This was cool, right? So the guy who we saw earlier who killed Tim runs back to the ship, flies off. And of course, they've attached the ship to the anchorage at the bottom. It was a very cute moment. It was actually a very a nice thing because when he takes off, you see the string behind him, the chain, and then it goes taut, and it's like, oh, dude, that is going to leave a mark. So, yeah, and of course, the ship then blows up. Our guys are all waiting for our heroes to turn up in the town. I was like, mate, it's going from bad to worse. And of course, this is what we're saying about the swearing. So when Moss says, okay, we've heard bastard, he actually says it's shit. And it's like, bloody hell. It's like, and this is, as we said earlier, the galaxy far, far away we are not familiar with. And only time will tell whether people accept it or not, whether they go, you know what, I'll work with it, or some people say, no, they should not do that. They should always keep it family friendly. And this show is definitely not family friendly by any stretch. I can imagine a whole lot of kids saying this is more too, like, the content is very adult, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I guess that's the reason why dealing with a character that most people don't even care about, have never shown any interest in whatsoever, didn't even know who he was. Cassian, who? The guy from Rogue One. Why would they make a show about that guy? Who cares about him? They can take risks and get away with it. And I think it works. And I think in the future, like whatever the next series that comes out after this, probably Mandalorian season 3, there'll be a whole lot of fans who'll go, oh, thank God we're back to normal Star Wars. While some people will be going, oh no, now we're going back to saccharine Star Wars, because things like Mandalorian and Kenobi and all that are quite saccharine. So only time will tell to see whether Andor sets a chain in motion as to other Star Wars series following this path. But for now, for those who are prepared to sort of take this on board, I think it actually works quite well. But as I said earlier, it won't be for everybody, and it will divide, and it already has, the fan base. With that in mind, Paul Khan is tied up, you know, and he doesn't even realize it's his lucky day because, as we said, if Cassian had known who he was, sure, it would have been a bolt in the head, but it wasn't to be. And how embarrassing! He gets discovered by one of his own men, and he's been tied up. If they next thing would have been they'd take his uniform and he's left in his underwear. But I thought, oh, Khan, you got no idea how lucky you are. And of course, Khan now realizes there's two people involved, not just one, Cassian and somebody else. Now, of course, when they've got the ship that goes down the main street and all the guys are shooting the shit out of it and it blows up, and okay. And I thought, mate, guys, you need to take lessons from the Nemoidians and the Phantom Menace, because this one is clearly a decoy. And as a consequence, we knew it was not going to end well. For these dudes. All they wanted to do was just arrest Cassian, and they've just been blown to Kingdom Come. And it's like, oh, not good. So when that happens, I think one of the greatest moments in the entire series occurs. You just look, and the image, without any words, says everything. And this is why I come up with the theory that Khan is going to blame Cassian for all of this, right? And he's going to become his own. Now, I think it's pronounced Javert from Les Miserables, Les Miserables. I get it right. Okay. And he's now gone on this absolute obsession to hunt Cassian down, because you can see Khan is in dire straits. He's lost dudes. He's gone against orders. I'd love to see what happens in episode 4, which comes out in 2 days' time. What's he going to do? How is he going to explain this? Right? And he's going to point the finger at Cassian, saying that prick stuffed up everything. And I think that's possibly what will happen. And that's going to be how the story progresses, where even if Khan gets kicked out of the Primors, he is going to be on a anti-Cassian trait and then be hunting him down until either Khan dies, which he probably will, or something else occurs. But you can clearly see that he's not the happiest camper in the world. With that in mind, they look at all the carnage. And I was thinking, at what point does Khan think, okay, how is he going to explain it? How's he going to report it? And whether he can handball the blame off to somebody else. Someone else was responsible for going down this path. You do wonder. Typically, when you've got cowardly people who find themselves out of their depth, they'll always find a way to pass off the responsibility to somebody else. Be very curious to see what happens, especially when the Chief Inspector Hind comes back, who was the character in the first episode, and discovers what's happened here. So there's a lot of explaining to do. So it's particularly cool. And of course, in the Indy cracks, okay, and this is a very common trope with officers in these situations. They've lost it, and only Mosk is the guy who can just take charge and make things happen. So yeah, it's a very good moment, okay? And obviously, from the audience's point of view, we're saying, well, dude, you kind of brought it upon yourselves. You cocked this up badly for yourselves. And for Khan, you're going, mate, you're a complete knob. You should have realized what you're getting yourselves into. But of course, they didn't know. And they're going to have to deal with the consequences. And I'll tell you what, that'll be the most fascinating thing when they do come across that part in the story. What are the consequences of what they've done? So Cassian's done the Mickey whoop with Luthen on the ship, on the speeder, back to the guy's ship. And of course, we have a whole montage sequence here. We know that both Marva and B2 are never going to see Cassian ever again. Cassian is now an outlaw. So when Khan's going to put it, in fact, if anything, Cassian may be hunted by the Empire after this point. So it's going to be a bit of a big deal. So after being together for, was it 15 years or whatever else? Everybody's going to go their separate ways through actions that were not their fault. Okay, so that's the key thing. Cassian, sure, he killed the guys, but they brought it upon themselves, and it's all just gone completely pear-shaped after that. This is interesting. As someone pointed out, it's a great image of Ferrix, and it's one of the rare occasions, if the only occasion, where we see a planet that doesn't have one ecosystem. So Hoth was all ice, Bespin was all sort of clouds, Dagobah is all a swamp, Yavin 4 is just all trees and whatever else. It's nice to have a planet that actually has different ecosystems, and I thought that was actually kind of groovy. So, yeah, it's one of the bad tropes of like Tatooine is all sand. It's one of the bad tropes of Star Wars where like it's not like Earth where you got ice and desert and water and whatever everywhere. And then they just go, no, it's just too hard to explain that. Let's just have one planet that's all water, one planet that's all desert, one planet that's all desert. Oh my God, it's just unbelievable. So very, very cool. Mosk already seemed to be in charge, but is hiding behind Khan. Yes, yeah. I mean, Mosk clearly was just following along for the ride, but he clearly knew what he was doing. Plausible deniability, or I was following orders, and that's exactly what's going to happen. In the end, Khan has to take responsibility for what he's done, and Mosk will just say, the dude told me to do this, so I did that. And that's exactly right. So you do wonder how it's going to play out. Very, very cool. There's a long message from DJ. I'll have to get to it in a minute because it'll take me ages to read through it all. Okay, and we're almost at the end. So the curse of being in a predicament that Cassian didn't start, as I said, and this is one right to the end of the episode, that he's had to leave his home, leave Marva, leave all his friends, leave Bix, the whole lot, and he's now on the run, right? So Khan's going to report what's happened back to the authorities. That'll get into the Empire system. And, of course, now Cassian's going to end up with the Alliance and effectively go into hiding. So yeah, that's his journey just gone from bad to worse. And as we've said, I mean, he was never a happy camper anyway, and it's just going to get worse from here. And of course, the key thing for this entire episode, all the 3 episodes we've seen so far, what we've learned is that no one is happy, no one got what they wanted, and things are worse than they were before for everybody. All right. So the whole thing is complete misery. So if you're sitting there thinking, well, where's the happy, joyful moments? Where's the comedic moment? They're just not there, right? And it's a depressing show. So if you go, I'm going to watch some Star Wars today, and you put this on, you'll be going, oh, mate, I'm freaking like really upset. So it ended badly for everybody, and it wasn't even Cassian's fault. It was all because of the 2 guys at the start of episode 1. Unbelievable. Now, before I go any further, we're actually at the end of my slides. I'm nearly finished the presentation. Christy, can you give me your crimson yawns, please? Remember, the more yawns, the worse it was. The less yawns, the better it was. Okay? If you can send that through, that'd be fantastic. So a lot of people all agreed that episode 3 was a massive kick upstairs, right? And the action got involved. There was a lot more going on. It was faster. And there was elements that nobody saw coming. And I think that for that reason, it actually is a turning point for the series. So the first 2 episodes, a lot of people weren't very happy with. It kind of dragged a little bit, but this one really, really set the world on fire. And I watched this episode with about 4 other Star Wars fans, and we all applauded at the end of it, saying, yeah, that was really, really good. And be very curious to see where it's heading from here on. So Christy has gone for, this is our rating system for those who don't know it. Christy's gone for 6 yawns. So that's effectively 4 out of 10. So as Christy mentioned at the start of the show, it's not really a series that she's getting involved with or really enjoying. But to be fair, those ratings are a bit higher than what we had yesterday. I like this. So for only bad guys have neat hair. No one else has a hairbrush. Absolutely love it. So yeah, for myself, I thought it was great. I've ranked it sort of like an 8 or a 9 out of 10 because I like things being a little bit dark, a little bit nasty, even though it's very, very un-Star Wars. And as I said earlier, it is not going to appeal for everyone. All right, so there's a massive mention from DJ. I haven't even read this yet, so I'm going to have to do this on the screen. Oh, my God, it's cut me half. DJ's overall thought under Lucas, Star Wars was a fairy tale for adolescents. A few people have said this. Under Disney, they're making a much broader tent. Yes. I did not necessarily agree because there's still a lot of saccharine involved in this Disney side and making Star Wars stories for adults. Yes. You don't like it? Fair enough. Oh, sorry, there was a question. Don't like it? The content treatment was now rolling and just give it a few months, something else will come in. That's exactly right. So if you don't like it, just ignore it, move on. And that's the reason why I think it's good that they're focused on a character most people don't know anything about and don't care about. If they had done a series with Kenobi, for example, added in all this darkness, right? You know, a lot of fans would have gone, no, you don't add in real world swearing into Kenobi. You don't have situations where Leia, for example, gets bashed badly or something, or where people are getting killed in their eyes, right? Like you saw on one of the planets there. So I think because this is an obscure character, you can do it, you can get away with it. Whether it works for everybody, it's hard to say, but I think it's actually quite cool. And Dale agrees with you, DJ, as well. So yes, a lot of people said it's not George Lucas's vision. Having said that, it's worth noting that back in 2009, 2010, George Lucas was planning to make a series called Underworld. It was going to be set on Coruscant, under the ground, like 50 levels underneath, with Boba Fett. And apparently, so the story goes, he was following the pattern of what Battlestar Galactica, the reimagined series, had done, and from 2003 to 2007. And that was a really, really violent, hard-edged show. It was really nasty, actually. And the rumor was that he was going to do that with Underworld, make it a very, very Battlestar Galactica-esque show, which would have broken all these rules that we've seen established already for Star Wars. But of course, the show never got made because it was too expensive. But apparently 50 scripts were written and put away somewhere. That is how the rumor was. Whether it was true or not, who knows? But anyway, so that's how Andor, the third episode, has come out. It's come and gone. The next episode 4, which is due out in 2 days' time, is particularly groovy. And guess what? That is the end of my gas bag, and it's taken me 1 hour to get through it. Unbelievable, non-stop yapping from me. Yes, it's very, very cool. Good stuff. Now, before I go, if you haven't done so already, just be sure we've got our socials, our Instagrams and Twitters and all that sort of crap if you want to find more information about our shows, because we do actually have a show tomorrow night. The last episode of Toys on Trial, and of course, Rip Off the Card returns on Wednesday. Very good stuff. With that in mind, I'm going to bail out. I hope you do like Andor. If you are dialed into it, like some people are really dialed into it, they've said it's the best series they've produced for Star Wars so far, even though that's probably a minority comment, but it's still it's good to see that people are saying that. There's going to be more of it. Still got another 10 episodes to go. So hopefully it gets better from here. All right, guys, we're going to leave it to a party hard, a rock on. Thanks for sticking around with my yapping on, and I will see you all very, very soon. Next week when Mr. Aaron returns. Okay, take care. All the best. Bye-bye.